Elias Drake tightened the straps of his helmet as the shuttle hovered over the strange, greenish terrain of the newly discovered planet, Zephyria 7. From above, the world looked almost peaceful. Vast forests glimmered with a soft luminescence, rivers shimmered like liquid silver, and mountains twisted into jagged alien shapes. Yet the moment the landing gear touched the soil, Elias felt the subtle hum of unease. This planet was silent, except for the faint whispers of wind brushing through crystalline trees. He stepped onto the ground, boots sinking slightly into the soft moss. The air smelled sweet and metallic at the same time. Around him, the small human outpost blinked with lights, like a cluster of fireflies trapped in glass domes. Scientists and engineers were already moving about, preparing instruments to analyze the planet's strange atmosphere and plant life. But Elias was not here for plants or minerals. He had heard rumors from the first scouting teams, rumors of something alive, something intelligent but utterly silent, something that had never spoken, never communicated in any language humans could understand. He adjusted the scanner strapped to his chest, checking the readings for anomalies. Then he saw her. She appeared at the edge of a clearing, her figure tall and slender, with skin that shimmered faintly under Zephyria's soft light. Her arms moved with a grace that seemed almost liquid, and her eyes, large, dark, and luminous, watched him with quiet intensity. She made no sound. There was no vibration, no whisper, no hum. Nothing. The team behind him murmured in awe, but also in fear. "Is she friendly?" one engineer asked. Elias shook his head slightly. "We won't know unless we try," he said. His voice carried calm authority, but even he could not fully mask his excitement. The alien woman, later he would learn her name, did not approach. She stood silently, tilting her head as though studying him or perhaps judging him. Elias lowered his scanner and raised his hands, palms open, a gesture of peace. For a long moment nothing happened. The wind swirled, the trees shimmered, and time seemed to stretch. Then she stepped forward slowly, each movement deliberate. Her eyes never left his. Elias' pulse quickened. This was it, the first true contact. The outpost scientists tried to communicate with her, using lights, sounds, and recorded human voices. They flashed holographic symbols in the air. They played music and recited numbers. The alien remained unresponsive. She did not flinch at the lights, did not blink at the sounds. She simply existed, watching, waiting. Elias stepped closer. "I'm Elias," he said softly. "I want to understand you." The other humans had weapons holstered, scanners ready, but Elias simply walked, keeping his movements slow and deliberate. The alien led them to a clearing where the ground glowed faintly under her feet. Strange symbols were carved into the moss and rocks, forming patterns that twisted and spiraled like galaxies. Elias crouched to examine them. They were not human, not anything he had ever seen. The lines pulsed faintly, almost like they were alive. "Some kind of language?" one scientist whispered. "Possibly," Elias replied, "or maybe a map or a message." His eyes were fixed on the glowing patterns, but he kept one hand on his scanner. He did not want to make any assumptions. The alien remained silent, watching him. Her eyes reflected curiosity, intelligence, and most surprisingly, trust. She had allowed them here into this sacred place. That trust, fragile as it was, moved Elias more than any words could. Over the next days, Elias began spending more time with her. He learned that she responded to human presence without fear, but also without speech. She mimicked some movements, mirrored expressions, and even repeated small gestures he made. But her silence remained complete. He noticed something extraordinary. She seemed sensitive to emotion. When humans argued, she would step back, her body tensing. When humans laughed, she would tilt her head and make soft, almost musical hums, not words, just sound. When Elias approached her with calm and respect, she mirrored his posture, relaxed her shoulders, and allowed him closer. Elias experimented with different methods of communication. He tried simple words. "Hello, friend, peace." She did not respond. Then he tried music. He played soft melodies on a portable synth, combining tones with rhythmic pulses. Her eyes widened slightly at one pattern, a subtle flicker of recognition. Encouraged, Elias began studying her in more detail. She had bioluminescent markings along her arms and neck. These lights flickered when she was curious, calm, or agitated. He hypothesized that her species might communicate through light and emotion as much as sound. Days passed, and the humans began to see what Elias already understood. She was not simply silent. She was choosing not to speak, perhaps because she had never trusted anyone enough to try. And now she was beginning to trust him. One morning, Elias brought a small device to the clearing, a combination of a light projector and a simple sound generator. He turned it on, projecting spirals of color into the air while playing harmonized tones. She watched, fascinated, stepping closer with each pulse of light. Then, almost imperceptibly, she made a sound, a single note soft, almost a whisper, but enough to make Elias' heart leap. He smiled gently. "That's it," he said. "You're trying." Elias spoke slowly, using simple words, gestures, and music. She listened, observed, and sometimes responded with soft hums, mirrored gestures, or fleeting lights along her skin. Communication was emerging, fragile and slow, but it was real. The outpost began to notice. Other humans were amazed, some skeptical, others fearful. They had never seen such a creature, never seen such patience in action. Many doubted that she would ever speak properly. Elias ignored them. He had seen the spark, and that was enough. One evening, as Zephyria's twin moons rose above the glowing forest, Elias sat across from her in the clearing. He held out his hand, palm open. She hesitated, then placed hers atop his. The moment was simple, quiet, and profoundly human. Trust, he realized, was not forced. It was earned. Suddenly, a shimmer of movement in the forest caught their attention. Shadows danced between trees, larger than any animal he had recorded. The alien tensed, a warning in her posture. Elias stood slowly, scanning the trees. For a moment, fear tightened his chest, but then he noticed the shadows recede. Whatever it was, it seemed curious but not hostile. He turned back to her. She tilted her head, almost as if to say, "I told you." And for the first time, Elias felt something deep within him settle. She was not just a silent alien. She was a being capable of thought, of judgment, of choice. And she had chosen him, chosen to trust him enough to communicate. As the days stretched into weeks, Elias and the alien, whom he now called Leora after the soft glow of her skin, began forming a routine. Every morning they explored the ruins together. Every evening they practiced music, light patterns, and gestures. Each day she responded more, her confidence growing. He documented everything, carefully noting her reactions, her expressions, and the faint sounds she made. Others in the outpost began to notice small changes. Instruments that had seemed useless were suddenly filled with meaning when she interacted. The ruins no longer seemed like cold stones. They were alive, resonating with her presence. Elias understood that this was more than a simple experiment. This was the beginning of a bridge between worlds. A single human, patient and respectful, could awaken a voice that had been silent for centuries. And if that voice could speak, what wonders might it reveal? That night, as the twin moons bathed the forest in silver light, Elias sat alone with Leora in the clearing. She hummed softly, her body glowing faintly in rhythm with the night's quiet pulse. He smiled, feeling the weight of the moment. Tomorrow, he thought, perhaps she will speak again. Perhaps she will say something more. For now, he listened. And that, he realized, was enough. Elias woke before dawn, the cold mist of Zephyria 7 brushing his face through the visor of his helmet. The forest around the outpost was quiet, almost reverent, as if it knew that today would be different. He grabbed his small satchel, packed with instruments, light panels, and his portable synthesizer. Today, he would try something new with Leora. When he reached the clearing, she was already there, standing near the glowing moss. Her bioluminescent markings pulsed faintly in rhythm with her breathing, like a soft heartbeat in the early morning light. She tilted her head as he approached, the faintest glow of curiosity in her eyes. "Good morning," he said softly, kneeling to place a small instrument on the ground. "I have something to show you." She did not speak, but her eyes followed every movement he made. Elias switched on the device, and a series of colored lights spiraled into the air. He played a soft melody, combining rising and falling tones, hoping to mimic the rhythm of her natural pulses. At first, she simply watched. Her hands moved slowly, tracing the shapes of the air, almost as if she were trying to understand the colors and sounds. Elias noticed that when certain colors, pale blues and soft greens, shone brightest, her skin glimmered more intensely. Her breathing changed subtly, faster, lighter. Encouraged, Elias adjusted the device. He played a more complex sequence, one that combined mathematics, music, and motion. It was a strange creation, one that only a human could imagine, numbers dancing as melodies, melodies forming patterns of light. Leora froze, her eyes widened. A soft sound escaped her lips, not a word, just a tone, almost like a hum. Elias' heart skipped a beat. It was the first reaction that seemed truly intentional, a response to his own effort rather than instinct. "Yes," he whispered, a smile spreading across his face. "You heard it. You reacted. That's amazing." Sometimes a hum, sometimes a flicker of light along her arms, sometimes a movement that mirrored his gestures. She was learning. He was teaching. And somewhere in the middle of that exchange, a bond was forming. By midday, Elias noticed she was becoming more daring. She reached out her hand and touched one of the light panels, causing it to glow brighter. Then she moved her hands through the spirals, and the lights followed her movements. Elias stepped back, letting her explore. She was communicating in her own way, shaping the patterns of light and sound, expressing something he could not yet understand. Other humans watched from a distance, fascinated but skeptical. Dr. Wren, the colony's lead xenobiologist, whispered to a technician. "This is incredible, but can it last? What if she never speaks in words?" He spoke softly, telling her stories about Earth, about humanity, about the oceans, the forests, and the people who built cities and then wondered about the stars. He described laughter, sorrow, and hope, and he watched her eyes shift, following his words even though she could not speak. Then, almost imperceptibly, she tried again. A small sound, like a whisper of a vowel, escaped her lips. It was hesitant, unsure, but it was an attempt at speech. Elias leaned closer. "That's it, Leora, you're trying, you can do it." The breakthrough did not go unnoticed. Within the colony, whispers began to spread. A few engineers approached Elias, trying to understand what was happening. "Do you really think she can speak?" one asked. "She's already responding," Elias said quietly. "It's just a matter of time before she forms words. Patience is key." They explored the forest, studied the ruins, and practiced communication with light and sound every day. Leora was no longer hesitant. She now made soft hums and repeated certain patterns of light intentionally, as if testing how well he could follow her meaning. One afternoon, Elias noticed something unusual. A group of shadows moved in the forest beyond the clearing. He froze, scanning carefully. The shapes were large and unfamiliar, alien creatures he had never catalogued. Leora's skin glowed brighter, her body tensing. She stepped behind him, alert. Elias put a hand on her arm gently. "It's okay, we'll watch, no sudden moves." Leora relaxed slowly, a soft hum escaping her lips. Elias realized she was warning him, sharing her understanding of danger through sound and gesture. The bond between them was no longer just about communication, it was about trust and survival. As the days passed, Elias began to notice patterns in her reactions. Certain combinations of music and light prompted emotional responses. Excitement, curiosity, calm, even amusement. He experimented carefully, recording everything. When he played a gentle rhythm, she would mirror it with her hands. When he created a complex pattern, she would pause, studying, and then attempt her own sequence. Then came the moment Elias had been waiting for. One morning, as the twin moons rose into Zephiria's sky, he played a melody based on a simple phrase he spoke aloud. "Friend." The notes were soft, the pattern simple, repeating 3 times. Leora tilted her head, her glow brightening in response. Then, in a voice so soft it was almost imperceptible, she repeated the sound, not perfectly but clearly attempting the word. Elias felt a surge of triumph. "Yes, that's it," he exclaimed quietly. He reached out, placing a hand gently near hers. She hesitated, then mirrored the gesture. "You spoke, sort of, but that's the start, that's the first step." Others whispered among themselves, debating what this meant for humanity's place in the universe. Elias did not celebrate. He focused on Leora, knowing the real challenge was not just getting her to speak a single word. It was teaching her to trust words at all, to understand the strange and beautiful way humans expressed themselves. In the following days, they tried more words. Elias would speak, she would attempt to mimic. Sometimes she would fail, other times she would succeed. But always she was learning. The trust between them deepened. Elias began to notice subtle shifts in her behavior. She would approach him when she wanted to interact, avoid him when she needed solitude, and even respond to his emotions with her own glowing patterns. Then one afternoon, Elias discovered something astonishing. While they practiced, Leora began combining sounds, not just single words, but sequences of vowels and consonant-like tones. Elias realized she was trying to form meaning. He adjusted his teaching, combining gestures, lights, and sounds to show her the connection between a word, an idea, and an emotion. By evening, Leora had made short phrases, though imperfect, still more like songs than words. She repeated the sequences several times, watching Elias' reaction carefully. When he smiled and nodded, she seemed to understand that she had succeeded. She was speaking, not just responding. That night, as the outpost slept under Zephiria's silver moons, Elias sat alone with Leora. The forest around them pulsed softly, alive with bioluminescent plants and the faint whispers of alien life. Leora glowed faintly, humming patterns that mimicked human speech. Elias realized something profound. It was not just words she was learning. She was learning to share herself, to connect with another species in a way no one had ever achieved before. Yet the breakthrough also brought unease. Word of her progress spread beyond the outpost. Rival alien factions, aware of her existence and intrigued by the humans' influence over her, began moving through Zephyria's shadows. Elias sensed it before it became obvious. Eyes watching from the forests, distant lights moving too methodically to be natural. He knew that trust, patience, and ingenuity had awakened her voice, but now they would be tested. Leora's first words had opened a door. Behind it, opportunities and dangers both waited. Elias placed a hand on Leora's glowing arm and whispered, "We're ready, whatever comes. You trust me, and I trust you." She responded with a soft hum, a small sound that carried more meaning than any sentence. She understood, and that Elias knew was the most important step of all. Elias woke to the soft hum of Zephyria's morning. The twin moons were fading, leaving a pale blue light across the forest. He hurried to the clearing where Leora was already waiting, standing among the softly glowing moss. Her skin pulsed faintly in patterns he had begun to recognize, curious, cautious, and ready. "Good morning," he said, kneeling to set down his instruments. "Are you ready today?" Elias had prepared a new experiment, a combination of music, light, and gesture designed to prompt words, not just sounds. He had noticed that she responded most strongly to sequences that combined emotion with patterns, so he had crafted a melody meant to inspire recognition and communication. He played it carefully, each note precise, each movement synchronized with the lights. Leora stepped into the center, watching, and then she began to mirror his gestures, moving her arms through the spirals of color, glowing brighter with each sequence. Then it happened. A small sound, tentative and wavering, escaped her lips. Elias froze, holding his breath. It was not a word yet, just a tone, but it was clear she was trying intentionally. He smiled softly. "That's it, Leora. That's the first step. You can do it." By midday, she had made several attempts, small phrases that were more melody than language. Elias took careful notes, mapping her sounds to gestures, matching tones with colors, trying to find patterns. He realized something extraordinary. Leora's speech was not like human speech. It was interwoven with light, movement, and emotion. To truly understand her, one had to see, hear, and feel at the same time. While Elias worked with her, shadows moved at the edge of the forest. He sensed the presence before he saw it, a soft disturbance among the trees, deliberate and careful. He froze, scanning. A group of alien scouts, slender and dark-skinned with reflective eyes, observed them from a distance. They did not approach, but their interest was obvious. Elias knew immediately who they were, factions that had been watching Zephyria 7 for decades. They were aware of Leora and her potential, and now that she was beginning to speak, they might act. He turned to Leora, keeping his voice calm. "Stay close to me. We'll continue, but be ready to move if we must." She understood, stepping slightly behind him, her glowing arms wrapping around her own body in a subtle protective gesture. For the rest of the afternoon, Elias continued teaching her words, simple ones at first: friend, safe, light. She repeated them with increasing confidence, sometimes combining them with gestures or flickers of light. When she succeeded, Elias smiled and nodded, praising her softly. The bond between them deepened with each attempt. As evening fell, Elias decided to try something new. He played a longer melody, repeating a phrase he had been teaching her for days. "Trust." The pattern of light spiraled upward, echoing the motion of his hands. Leora stepped forward, her eyes reflecting both concentration and understanding. She hummed the sequence first, then paused, then clearly, intentionally uttered her first recognizable word. "True." Her voice was soft, quivering, but it carried meaning. Elias' heart leapt. "Yes," he whispered. "You did it. You said it." Wren and a few other scientists arrived, careful not to startle her. "She spoke a word," Dr. Wren said, astonished. "Elias, this is incredible." She was choosing to communicate, and in doing so, she had begun a process that no human had ever achieved with another species. But progress always brings attention. While Elias and Leora practiced in the clearing, he noticed movement in the forest again. This time, the figures were larger and bolder. Alien scouts emerged, cloaked in shadows, watching carefully from a distance. Their weapons were not drawn, but their presence radiated intent. Elias understood the danger immediately. These were not simple explorers. They wanted control, control over Leora, control over the knowledge she could share. He had no weapons drawn, no heavy defenses ready, only his wits, patience, and connection with Leora. He took a deep breath. "Leora," he said softly, "stay close to me. We may need to move." She responded with a faint hum, matching the tone of reassurance he offered. He knew she trusted him completely, and he would not betray that trust. The scouts remained at the edge of the forest, observing, debating among themselves in clicks and tones that Elias could not understand. He realized that if they approached directly, the situation could escalate quickly. He needed a plan, but his options were limited. Then an idea came to him. Leora was not just learning human speech, she could also manipulate light and sound. Perhaps they could use that to communicate or to confuse the scouts if necessary. He turned to her. "Do you remember the light sequence we practiced yesterday? The one that changes with emotion?" She blinked, a soft pulse of blue. He nodded. "We'll try it, follow me." The combination of music and alien light created something unexpected, a display of intelligence, emotion, and coordination that they had not anticipated. Elias held his hand near hers, letting her continue. She seemed to understand instinctively, increasing the intensity of the light, adding new tones, mirroring his gestures flawlessly. The display was almost hypnotic. Slowly, the scouts retreated, confused and cautious. Elias let them go, breathing a sigh of relief. "You did it," he whispered to Leora. "Not just words, but this. You protected us." She responded with a soft, bright pulse along her arms, a signal he had come to recognize as pride. That night back at the outpost, Elias documented every moment. Leora had spoken words intentionally, combined sounds and gestures to create meaning, and even helped protect them from potential danger. The implications were staggering. She was not only intelligent, she was capable of collaboration, creativity, and strategy, traits humans valued and admired most in one another. As he recorded his observations, Elias realized something profound. Humanity often prided itself on its ingenuity, its ability to solve problems and adapt to challenges. But Leora's progress reminded him that trust, patience, and empathy were just as powerful. With these, a single human could awaken a voice that had been silent for centuries and even navigate threats without resorting to violence. He glanced at Leora, sitting near the glowing moss, her lights flickering softly. She had begun to mimic more complex sounds, her first real attempt at forming sentences just days away. Elias felt a swell of hope, not just for their connection, but for what this could mean for humans and aliens across the galaxy. Yet he also knew the danger was not gone. The scouts' presence indicated that others would come, motivated by curiosity, greed, or politics. Leora's voice was rare, precious, and powerful. Protecting her would require every ounce of ingenuity and courage he possessed. For now, though, Elias allowed himself a moment of quiet triumph. Leora had spoken her first word. She had chosen to trust him. And together, they had demonstrated what humans could do when they approached the universe with patience, respect, and determination. As the twin moons rose once more, casting silver light across the clearing, Elias sat beside Leora, listening to the soft hums and tones that she now offered willingly. The night was alive with possibility. And for the first time, he believed that nothing, not even the unknown dangers of Zephyria 7, could stop them. The morning on Zephyria 7 was cool and quiet, almost eerily so. Elias Drake moved carefully through the clearing, scanning the forest with practiced eyes. Leora followed close behind, her glowing patterns pulsing softly like a heartbeat. She had spoken a few more words over the last days, and now she was trying to form short sentences, her voice still hesitant but growing more confident. Elias paused near a small grove of crystalline trees. "Today," he said softly, "we're going to try something new. I want you to tell me about your world, your people." She had never spoken about herself before. Humans had always been the ones to teach, to guide, to ask questions. But Elias sensed she was ready. He gestured toward the ancient ruins nearby. "The stones, the patterns, they are yours. Show me what they mean." As she moved, light and soft tones flowed from her, almost like a song. Elias realized that she was speaking in her own way, combining gestures, sound, and light to convey meaning. Slowly, carefully, she formed words that Elias could recognize. Home, lost, guide, trust. Each word was heavy with emotion, not just a description, but a story. Elias listened, recording everything, marveling at the clarity and depth she expressed despite the limitations of her voice. "You're telling me your story," he said softly. "Your people, what happened to them?" He could feel the weight of what she was revealing. Her civilization had been advanced, wise, and now almost entirely gone. Yet here she was, carrying knowledge, memories, and warnings for anyone willing to listen. "Then we will listen," he said firmly. "And we will protect you." She responded with a soft, warm pulse of light, a gesture he had come to understand as trust and approval. As they spoke and explored, the forest seemed to awaken. The wind whispered through the crystalline trees, the glowing moss shimmered brighter, and the ruins seemed alive in response to her presence. Elias realized that Leora's voice was not just words, it was a connection to her world, a bridge between past and present, human and alien. But the progress also brought danger. The alien scouts from the forest had returned, this time in larger numbers. Elias noticed movement at the edge of the clearing, careful, deliberate, and watchful. They were closer than before, observing Leora, assessing the human's ability to influence her. Elias took a deep breath. "We need to move," he said. "Leora, stay close." She mirrored his movement, her glow brightening in response. They moved toward the deeper ruins, a network of ancient corridors hidden beneath the forest floor. The alien scouts did not follow immediately, unsure of what Elias and Leora would do next. Inside the ruins, Leora's light reflected off the walls, illuminating carvings and symbols that had been lost to time. She traced patterns with her hands, and each time she did, small holographic images flickered into existence, maps, diagrams, and representations of alien technology. Elias watched in awe. This was knowledge her civilization had preserved, knowledge that humans could now access. "Look at this," Elias whispered. This could change everything. Navigation, energy, even medicine. We need to understand it." The alien scouts finally entered the ruins, their forms moving silently through the corridors. Elias realized they were not here to negotiate. They wanted to capture Leora, to control her and the knowledge she held. He whispered to her, "Stay behind me. We will not let them take you." She understood instantly, stepping slightly back, her glow dim but steady. Elias assessed the corridors. They were narrow, twisting, and uneven, perfect for defense, perfect for someone who understood human ingenuity. Using the environment to their advantage, Elias guided Leora through hidden passages, placing light panels at key junctions to confuse and mislead the scouts. The panels reflected her glowing patterns, creating illusions of movement and sound. The scouts paused, confused, unsure which direction to follow. Elias smiled slightly. Her trust and understanding of patterns were as much a weapon as any human technology. They reached a larger chamber, the heart of the ruins. Here, Leora paused, placing her hands on a carved pedestal. Her glow intensified, and her voice rang out, clear and deliberate. "Help! Remember! Protect!" Elias realized she was trying to communicate not just instructions, but a message for future generations. He nodded. "We will, we promise." He activated the remaining light panels, creating a dazzling display that combined motion, color, and sound. Leora mirrored his actions, enhancing the patterns with her own glowing signals. The chamber became a maze of light and sound, disorienting the scouts and giving them time to escape through another passage. Elias and Leora moved quickly, deeper into the ruins. She guided him to a hidden chamber filled with ancient artifacts, devices that appeared to store information, energy conduits, and tools designed for purposes humans could only guess at. Elias felt a thrill of possibility. This knowledge, combined with Leora's guidance, could advance humanity beyond what he had ever imagined. "Teach me," he said softly. "Show me everything you can." He realized that her civilization had valued understanding and empathy as much as innovation, a lesson humans desperately needed. As night fell, they rested in the chamber. Elias watched her glow fade to a soft, calming light. "You've taught me so much," he whispered. "Not just about your world, but about patience, trust, and understanding. Humanity has a lot to learn from you." They were regrouping, planning their next move. Elias knew that when they returned, it would be more aggressive, more determined. Leora's voice and the knowledge she held were too valuable for them to ignore. He turned to her. "We need a plan," he said. "We cannot let them capture you. We will use everything we have learned, from you, from me, from humanity. We will protect this knowledge, and we will protect you." Every word she had learned, every pattern she had shown him became a tool in their strategy. She was no longer just a silent guide. She was an active partner, fully participating in their defense. As the first light of Zephiria's moons faded, Elias looked at Leora. "Tomorrow we will face them," he said, "but we are ready. Together, we are stronger than anything they can bring." But he felt confident, because he had Leora and she had him. Together, they could face whatever dangers Zephyria 7 and the galaxy might send their way. As they prepared for the approaching scouts, Elias whispered one final word: trust. Her knowledge was expanding, and humanity, through patience, understanding, and courage, was proving once again that it could rise to meet any challenge. The night stretched on, but Elias did not sleep. He watched over Leora, recording every sound, every flicker of light, every sign of growth. In the quiet, he understood the truth. This was more than survival. This was the beginning of something far greater than himself, far greater than Leora alone. Together, they were shaping the future, not just for humans, not just for her people, but for the galaxy itself. And when the scouts returned, Elias knew they would find more than a human and an alien in a clearing. They would find two beings who had learned to trust, understand, and work together, a partnership forged in patience, curiosity, and courage. The clearing was quiet under the pale light of Zephyria's twin moons. Elias Drake stood at the edge, scanning the forest one last time before stepping toward Leora. She was waiting, glowing softly, her bioluminescent patterns pulsing like a heartbeat. In the past weeks, she had learned words, short phrases, and even begun forming sentences. Today, Elias hoped she would speak fully, intentionally, and clearly. "Are you ready?" he asked gently. Leora tilted her head, her glow brightening in acknowledgement. Then she stepped forward, her arms moving through the air, tracing the patterns of light they had practiced. Elias followed, keeping pace, watching her every movement, every subtle change and glow. For hours, they practiced together, combining speech, sound, gesture, and light. She formed words with increasing confidence, speaking short sentences. "Trust is strong, friends are safe, knowledge must live." Elias felt a thrill of pride. She was no longer hesitant, she was choosing to speak. By midday, a message had formed, clear and deliberate. Leora looked at Elias, her eyes bright and steady. "Human," she said, her voice ringing with clarity, "you helped me find my voice. Now I will show you my people's wisdom." Leora guided him through halls and chambers filled with alien knowledge preserved for centuries. There were devices that stored information through light, energy conduits that could power entire cities, and tools designed to manipulate matter in ways humans had only imagined. "This knowledge," Elias whispered, "it could change humanity. But it is not for power. It is for learning, for understanding, for growth." Together they moved like one being, human and alien in perfect coordination. The scouts hesitated. They had expected fear, chaos, or force. Instead, they found intelligence, trust, and collaboration. Slowly, they began to retreat, realizing that these humans and Leora were not merely prey or tools. They were partners, capable of strategy, creativity, and resilience. Elias and Leora reached the central chamber, a vast room where the air shimmered with stored energy. Here, Leora paused, placing her hands on a pedestal covered in ancient symbols. She spoke clearly, her voice resonating through the chamber. "This is my people's gift. Knowledge of stars, of worlds, of life. It is for those who seek wisdom, not conquest." The potential of this knowledge was beyond imagination, but its purpose was noble. Leora had chosen humanity as trusted keepers, not to wield as a weapon, but to learn, share, and protect. He knelt beside her. "We will honor it," he said. "We will use it to help life, to explore, to grow." She nodded, glowing warmly, a signal he had come to understand as agreement and hope. The scouts watched from the edges of the chamber, unsure how to react. Elias knew they had a choice: attack and risk everything, or learn from what they saw. He stepped forward calmly, holding his hands open. "You can see," he said. "We are not your enemies. Together we can understand more than any one group ever could. Trust earned is strong. Work together and life will thrive." Over the following days, humans and aliens began working together under Leora's guidance. She spoke of her civilization's principles: balance with the environment, careful observation, empathy in decision-making, and the integration of knowledge across species. Elias watched, amazed, as humans began to adapt, learning quickly from her insight and applying it to their own technology. Together, they reconstructed parts of the ancient devices. Energy conduits hummed with life, maps of distant star systems lit up with possibilities, and tools that once seemed mystical became practical instruments for exploration and study. Leora guided them carefully, correcting mistakes, praising ingenuity, and encouraging collaboration. Elias noticed something extraordinary. Humans were not just learning the technology, they were embracing her philosophy. Patience, empathy, trust, and creativity became central to their work. Every success reinforced the idea that humanity's true strength lay not in force or domination, but in understanding and cooperation. One evening, as Zephyria's moons rose over the clearing, Leora turned to Elias. "You see now," she said, her voice calm but full of authority, "your people are capable of greatness, not because of tools or weapons, but because of the mind, the heart, and the courage to try. And you've shown us the way." Aliens who had once seen humans as inferior now observed them with respect. Humans who had feared the unknown now embraced it with curiosity. And Leora, once silent, now spoke freely, bridging the gap between civilizations. Elias reflected on the journey. It had begun with trust, a single human patient enough to encourage, to listen, and to respect an alien life. That trust had grown into understanding, understanding into communication, and communication into collaboration. He looked at Leora, her glow steady and bright. "This is only the beginning," he said. "Your people's knowledge, our skills, and our willingness to learn, together we can reach farther than anyone imagined." Protect, share, learn. Each word carried weight, wisdom, and hope. Elias felt the truth of it deep in his heart. Humanity had been tested, and it had proven itself worthy, not through violence, but through patience, ingenuity, and empathy. The scouts, now allies, assisted in translating some of the alien knowledge to forms humans could use safely. They began sharing insights about other worlds, ancient technologies, and philosophies that had guided Leora's people for centuries. The outpost became a hub of learning, where humans and aliens worked side by side, exchanging ideas and solving problems together. Months passed. The forest of Zephyria 7 became alive with activity, but it was harmonious activity. Leora guided the work with calm authority, her voice now fluent, her sentences complex, her knowledge deep. She taught humans not just to build or navigate, but to think critically, feel deeply, and act responsibly. Elias often paused to watch her in the clearing. She had become more than an ally. She was a teacher, a friend, and a symbol of what humanity could achieve when it approached life with empathy and curiosity. Her first hesitant words had blossomed into clear, meaningful communication, opening doors that had been closed for centuries. One day, Leora led a demonstration for all gathered at the outpost. She spoke of energy manipulation, star mapping, and ecological balance. But she also spoke of philosophy, patience, trust, empathy, and collaboration. Every word resonated, reaching humans and aliens alike. Elias realized that this was the legacy she was leaving, not just knowledge, but a way of thinking, a way of being. As she concluded, she looked at Elias. "You gave me my voice," she said. "Now, together, we give it to the galaxy." Humans, aliens, and Leora stood together, united by trust, courage, and understanding. The stars above Zephyria 7 seemed brighter, as if acknowledging the promise of this new collaboration. Elias felt a deep sense of fulfillment. A single act of patience had changed everything. A single human had inspired an alien to speak. And together they had shown that knowledge, empathy, and ingenuity could truly bridge worlds. As the twin moons cast silver light across the forest, Leora spoke one final phrase. "Together we rise, together we protect, together we learn." Humanity had proven itself worthy, and the galaxy was ready to listen. And for the first time, Elias felt certain that the future, bright, shared, and filled with possibility, was theirs to shape.